Okay, everybody. So my name is Maria Allen, and I'm the editor of South Shore Living Magazine and Plymouth Magazine. I work for a company called Lighthouse Media Solutions, and we're based on Cape Cod. We have an office in Hyannis. And I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about my story and how I came to be in the position that I'm in. When I went to college thinking that I was going to become a doctor. I was really into biology. I excelled at biology, went on that course path for some time, and then somewhere in my sophomore year, I realized that I was not exceeding in chemistry, and I went to my professor and I asked her, what kind of grades do I need to get to become a doctor? She said, well, you really should be getting A's. And I said, well, that's not going to happen. So I repositioned what I was going to do. And I switched majors, went into become an English major with a communications minor. I've always had an interest in journalism, but our school didn't have a journalism program. So while I did have some journalism courses, it wasn't the actual focus of my major. So I graduated from Regis College in 2003 and moved home with my parents and started looking for jobs. And quickly discovered that there weren't a lot of jobs, at least in my community, available in the career that I had chosen. So I started applying in the Boston area, and I created a 3-ring binder for myself, and I would print out the job application, send out my resume, cover letter, and got a lot of either declines or just no answer at all, which was very discouraging because, you go to the trouble to pursue something and you want to start working in your field. So I decided to approach it from a different perspective. I went into my local community and made a list of all the local newspapers, magazines, radio stations, television stations, anything I could think of that was in the media industry on Cape Cod. And I started calling them. And I said, hey, I'm Maria Allen. At the time I was Maria Ferry. And I said, I just graduated. I'm really into writing. I'd like to get some experience. And several of them, well, none of them had job opportunities at the time, but several of them said, well, you're not in college anymore, so you can't have an internship. We only give internships to college students. And so that was discouraging. And then I went and I called Cape Cod Magazine, and they said, sure. They said, if you want to come in and get some experience, we'd love to have you. So I spent the summer after college going into the offices 2 days a week in Hyannis, and I would do basically anything that they needed, whether it was fact-checking, phone calls, researching story ideas, editing stories, writing stories. I still remember my first story was an article about cranberry bogs, and I thought it was the most amazing thing that I had ever written. And so after the summer was over, the publishers decided to create a new magazine covering the South Shore, and that was going to be South Shore Living Magazine. And the assistant editor at the time for Cape Cod became the editor of South Shore Living. And the publishers asked me, since they knew me, if I would be interested in taking on this position as an editorial assistant, serving both Cape Cod Magazine and South Shore Living. So being there in the office, having those relationships with the business owners, them being able to see my work ethic, them being able to see my abilities, put me right in the right place to get a job offer, and I didn't even have to apply. So one of my biggest recommendations for anybody is really to expand what you consider an experience. Not every experience is a job where you're actually getting paid. Some of the most beneficial relationships will be those volunteer activities that you might do on the side, or if you're really interested in a particular industry, going in and meeting those people and seeing what they do on a day-to-day basis, so you can figure out if it's something that really appeals to you, and so they can see how you can work. So that was in the November of 2003 that I was hired. And since then, the company was purchased 3 years ago, but I've been with the same company ever since, which is not something that a lot of people can say, but I worked my way up in the positions at the magazine, editorial assistants, associate editor, eventually becoming the editor of South Shore Living. And so now my responsibilities include basically coming up with all of the editorial content that is going to be in these magazines. They're monthly. So show of hands if anybody has seen South Shore Living before. Okay, so this room had a few more. So we, like I said, we cover Quincy to Plymouth, and we cover food, history, arts and culture, new businesses, architecture, you name it. If it's about the lifestyle of people who live on the South Shore, then we want to write about it. We are all about celebrating the people on the South Shore. So a good example is if any of you ever go out to eat in Quincy, we just dedicated our June food issue to Quincy's growing food scene, and there are amazing restaurants that have just come in within the last year alone. So that's one of the really fun things that we get to do, is we're constantly learning, constantly meeting new people. And I really credit the fact that I was able to get my foot in the door unpaid as an intern fresh out of college for the fact that I even got the job to begin with. And I think that if you go to colleges, a lot of colleges will recommend that you do an internship, but it doesn't necessarily even have to be a set up, scheduled kind of program. It might be that you just have an interest in radio, say, and you think that might be something you might want to do down the road. Maybe you could volunteer your time a couple hours a week, and who knows, maybe then that will give you a foot in the door into a career path that you're really interested in. Or it may show you, oh, hey, I need to take this class, or pursue this certification to get on the path that I really want to be on. So anything that you're interested in, don't be afraid to pursue those interests. I think sometimes people will tell you, this is what you can get a job in. This is what you should do because you can get a job in, and definitely that shouldn't be discounted, but I think you also should at least take a portion of your time to celebrate the things that you really love innately, and to find little pockets of time to do those things. And I think that is, in the long run, one of the things that really pays off. So does anybody have any questions about what I just said? Yes?
At what time in your college journey did you decide to switch over from medical to something else? And how was that for you, figuring out what that something else would be?
It was my sophomore year, and a lot of people that I went to college with ended up switching in some way what they originally picked. When I went to college, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. And when I decided that I wasn't going to go in the medical route, I basically looked at myself and I said, what do I What do I enjoy? What do I excel at? What is a skill that I have that I know that I could expand upon? And I think reading and writing were things that I did well, and so I naturally went more to like an English major path. And the funny thing about an English major is people a lot of times don't know, like, what are you going to do as an English major? What kind of job are you going to get when you graduate with an English degree? And the truth is that you can do all kinds of things, aside from a very specified field where you may have to have a very specified training. Liberal arts degrees can really take you on all different kinds of paths. So I think, I think don't be afraid to change your mind. It's definitely okay. Any other questions? So getting back to the idea of volunteering and interning, anybody here know Boston Magazine? Boston Magazine readers, Boston Common Magazine, some people. So in my position, I've also had my own interns now. So we have summer interns who come and basically work a couple days a week in our offices, doing writing, editing, same kind of things that I was doing when I first got my position. And those interns have in turn gone on to great positions. One of our interns became the food editor at Boston Magazine. One of our interns became an associate editor at Boston Common Magazine. One of our interns became, I don't remember what his position was, but he went to Forbes magazine. So definitely those internships, not only are they beneficial to you personally, so you can learn a lot, but they're also a really great tool for showing future employers that you have the skills needed to do whatever job that you're interested in. And, I think that sometimes people, they're more concerned with how am I going to make enough money to pay the bills, and that is, that's a struggle for everybody, but I think that internships, even if it's a few hours a week, are a great path to the careers that you are interested in. Any other questions? Do you have a question? No. So if you see some of the magazines that are being passed around in the audience here, we have Plymouth Magazine, we have South Shore Living, and this particular issue was our October issue, which featured a fashion cover. We highlighted fall fashions from South Shore Plaza up at Granite Links, if anybody knows Granite Links up in Quincy. And we had a photo shoot up there. So, maybe somebody's really into fashion and what's trending, and maybe you're really great with social media, and you're really great at taking a cute picture of whatever you're wearing or your coffee cup. You think that it means not very much, but in the grand scheme of things, out in the workplace, those kinds of skills, those social media skills, those photography skills, those ability to follow trends, those are all skills that employers will be looking for, especially in the line of work that we're in. But this day and age, so many companies, they employ full-time social media managers, the marketing managers are having to do all kinds of writing and editing tasks, and so anything that you really love, you should embrace and try to keep up with, because it could really be beneficial. Any other questions? What are you guys interested in? What sort of things are you most interested in either studying or just appeal to you? Do you read, or do you like music, art? Anybody? What? Yeah? No. Photography? Yeah. And yeah, I think something like photography is something that you could use in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different jobs. Do you have any interest, or do you have any ideas of what you might want to do down the road? Yeah? Something with photography? Or, yeah? You know, we have our interns here today that are working on articles on music festivals. So if anybody has ever heard of the Levitate Music Festival down in Marshfield, every summer there's this big outdoor music festival. So things like that. You might think that it's just that you really like enjoying live bands and taking pictures with your friends, but you know, even those types of things that you're doing for yourself could be a tool that you're developing in your journey. And yeah, any other questions? Yes?
Any stumbling blocks along your career path, whether it related to the male counterpart or anything that you could help us say, I was in this situation and I found my way out, kind of thing?
Well, I think that sometimes I'm trying to think of, you know, a good example. Where I live, I felt like there wasn't necessarily a lot of opportunity. And, you know, smaller communities can be like that. But I think I had to really look outside of my immediate circle and really talk to people, you know, find resources that would show me opportunities that I might not realize were there. Because when you're at home and you're searching online, whether it be for jobs or anything like that, it can be very discouraging because you don't see what you're looking for. You know, the jobs that are listed are not what you're interested in. And you don't feel like you apply or you have the skills necessary to even be considered for any of those positions. So I think the person-to-person conversations, the getting out and meeting people, informational interviews, doing the internships, going and just, you know, there are different networking groups that you can become associated with that will show you a lot more in your community that you never knew was there. And I know that that is something that has helped me, definitely. How are we for time? Okay. So let's see here. So what grade is everybody in here today? So kind of a few different grades in here. So how many, show of hands, how many people feel like they have some sort of idea what they would want to study or what they would want to do as a job? So a good amount of you. What are some of those things that are interesting to you or that you think might be exciting? Anything? So we had one photographer. Any, let's see, business people in the group, maybe? Yeah? Nursing, medical, couple in there. Anybody who is more of a arts, creative type person? Yeah? A couple people like that. That's great. Yeah? Did you?
So originally I wanted to be a surgeon, but then, you know, thinking about how life might take me different directions and thinking of nursing and then moving up. But then I also like
Yeah.
So just trying to figure it out. I'd like to
Did you have a comment too?
Oh, I was too well.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can comment on her, she's pretty cool. I wanted to study criminal justice with a minor in psychology and eventually kind of go on to essentially investigate like failures in the foster system.
Okay. Those are great paths. Anybody else? So are you uncertain what you're doing right now, trying to figure that out?
I'm just more like, there's definitely the passion there. It's just more about like the realistic, being realistic about it and what I would have to, sacrifice or do, like for school, obviously. And when I would get into that career path, how old I would be and if I would, and if I would want to dedicate as much time to my career, like,
Yeah, I mean, I think that is something that everybody struggles with, no matter what age you are, is, whether something is worth investing your time and money in. And, but I think especially at the age that you are now, you should not worry so much about how old you'll be when you get out or that kind of thing. I had a good friend who, she was an art major. She went into industrial design is what it's called, basically product design. And when she got out of art school, she went to the top place that she could possibly work. She went to work for Rubbermaid, and she was designing everything from like plastic totes to, mop buckets and all of these things that people used, and she had a great paying job. She made a lot more money than I ever made, and very successful. And then she, I don't know, maybe around 25, 26, maybe it was even closer to 30, she had a child. And through the process of being in the hospital, being surrounded by the nurses in the hospital and midwives and doulas and all of it, she became so inspired by the job that these nurses were doing that she decided to completely switch career paths and go back to school and pursue nursing. And it was a hard slog because obviously, when you're taking classes, you're not bringing in the same income and you're scheduling and you have kids and it's difficult. But she went on and, she's a nurse now, and it's something that she's very passionate about. And I think that so many people do change their path. They do change their major. They do change their career path. And it is scary. I think about it myself. It's a scary thing. But I think that if it's something that you love, why not give it a try? And the worst that'll happen is you'll, come to a point where you'll say, hey, guess what? This isn't really working anymore. And maybe that's the time when you, readjust, in some of your goals. Any question? Yep.
Have you ever struggled with finding a balance between your work and personal life?
All the time. I think especially now, I have a 2-year-old. He's actually going to be 3 in July, and he is hell on wheels and definitely keeping me very, very busy at home. And when you're young, whether you're in college or out of college, before you get those types of responsibilities, you have a little bit more leeway, to blend your personal life and your work life, and then it gets a little bit harder if you have those kinds of responsibilities. But I think it can definitely be done. I think you have to be resourceful, find people that you can lean on, no matter what your personal life responsibilities are. Even just, when I first met my husband, he really didn't know anything about what I was doing. And he felt a little bit uncomfortable being in some of the circumstances, you know, going to some of the events that I wanted to take him to and that kinds of thing. So, you know, you have to make adjustments and, you know, bring people along with you on the journey. So. Any other questions? So what towns, are everybody from this general area? Where does everybody live? Hanover. Weymouth. Very cool. So is there anything that you guys really want to know, you know, as far as, you know, deciding what you want to do or anything like that? I would definitely encourage, basically going back to what I was saying before, I would encourage you to embrace the things that you really like in your personal life and find ways of incorporating that into your professional life. So, yeah. Thank you.